In this video, we go over insertion sort list. So given the head of a single linked list, you sort the list using insertion sort and return the sorted list head. And then the steps for the algorithm is below. We consume one input element each time and grow an sorted output list. And then each iteration, it removes one element from the input data and then finds the location where it belongs within the sorted list and inserts it there. And then continues on until there are no more elements from the input list. And then here's the graphical image. And then in our example 1, we can see that we're giving the list 4, 2, 1, 3, and then want to sort it into 1, 2, 3, 4 using insertion sort. Let's go over the thought process. So for each of the node y, we will first, we'll first need to disconnect y from the input list. This can be done by setting y.next to null. But before we set y.next to null, we will want to save the next node. This will allow us to continue our traversal. Now, where do we insert y? We will need to skip all of the nodes that are less than or equal to y. And we'll call these nodes x. And then the first node that is greater than y or y.val, and we'll call this node z, we can insert y in between x and z. Now let's go over the pseudocode. So we're going to create the following variables. The first one is the sentinel head. So it's the sentinel head of the sorted list. And then we have our node, our current location inside the input list. So initially it's just head. So while node is not equal to null, we want to disconnect the current node, but before we disconnect it, we want to save the next node. So we're going to create a node, create a variable next, and set it to node.next. Then I want to set node.next to null. This will allow us to disconnect the current node. Now we want to traverse our sorted list to find our insert position. So we want to say, create a variable current to keep track of our current location inside the sorted list. Initially, we go to the sentinel head. Now, while current.next is not equal to null, and current.next.val, the value is less than or equal to the current, less than or equal to null.val. This means we currently want to skip all of the nodes, node values that are less than or equal to the current node, as we see up here. I want to skip all of them, which is basically our skipping node x. I want to set current to current.next. Now after we find our insert position, we want to set node.next to current.next. Then I want to set current.next to node. This basically insert it in the middle. Then we want to set node to next. This allows us to move on to the next node in the input list. Then we can return sentinel head.next, which basically is the head of the sorted list. Now let's go over the time and space complexity. So for the time complexity, we get of n squared, where n is the number of nodes. This is because for each of the nodes, we find its insertion position, and our space complexity is of 1 because we use the input list to generate our sorted list. Now let's go over the code. We'll first create our sentinel head. We just set it to 0, and then we can And then we're going to create a variable to keep track of our current location, which is equal to node starts at head. Now, while node is not equal to null, we want to save the next node first. Next is equal to node.next before we disconnect the current node. And then we disconnect our current node here. Now we want to create a variable to keep track of our next position or our current position. This will allow us to find the insertion point. So while current.next is not equal to null, and current.next.val is less than or equal to the node.val, this means we want to skip off the nodes that are smaller than or equal to the current node. So we get current to current.next. Now we want to insert the current node. So we get node.next is equal to current.next. And then we get current.next is equal to node. Now I want to move on to the next node in our input list. So we get node is equal to next. Then we can return sentinel head.next, which is the head of the sorted list. Let me know if any questions in the comment section below.